This is going to be my second video update for this Wednesday, coming to you from downtown Athens, Greece. And the main story that we need to talk about is that the grain deal with Russia is back on. Russia is suspending its withdrawal from the grain deal and will now be part of the grain deal once again. This is all thanks to Turkey and to Erdogan. So what is going on here? Well, I think in relationship terms, the best way to phrase this would be to say it's complicated. It is complicated. So the first thing that I'm thinking about is that Russia re-entering the grain deal means that it can re-inspect the ships without having this blockade uproar in the collective West. So that's the first thing that I'm thinking about. Keep in mind that Russia, well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it in a bit. So the first thing is that Russia can re-inspect the ships and take a peek inside this cargo to make sure there's no funny business being done, being transported by these ships. And the other thing that's interesting about Russia re-entering the grain deal is that they have received what they asked for, or at least what they were telling Turkey they wanted in order to re-enter the grain deal, which is written guarantees from Ukraine that it would not be using the corridor in order to carry out attacks, terrorist attacks. So they got written guarantees, which are written guarantees not only to Russia, from what I understand. These are written guarantees between Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the United Nations. And so Ukraine has now put itself on the hook. It's officially on record as saying we will not carry out terrorist attacks using these corridors. Now, the other thing that this written guarantee has accomplished, if you want to put it like that, is that this is a kind of admission from Ukraine that it was using these corridors to carry out terrorist attacks. Now, it's not exactly Ukraine coming out and saying, yeah, we were using these corridors to carry out terrorist attacks or to smuggle weapons or God knows what else, but it is a type of admission, a tacit admission, that Ukraine was using these corridors in order to carry out all kinds of illegal activities. And that I guess you could say is a kind of win for Russia. What Russia also does is that it exhausts all its options. From a PR perspective, Russia can say, okay, well, we re-enter the deal, even though Ukraine, with perhaps the help, as it's claimed by Russia, the help of Britain, tried to attack us, tried to attack our ships in Sevastopol. But we'll put all of that aside and we'll exhaust all our options to try and find a way to get this food out there for the good of the food market, for the good of the world, right? Because the price of wheat has dropped since this deal was announced. But for the good of everybody in the global community, we as the Russian Federation will give it another try. We'll give it one more try. And this time we have Ukraine on record, and thank you to Turkey for getting these written guarantees. And so it kind of gives Russia on the international stage, especially with its allies, China, India, Turkey, Iran, all these countries that Russia has been so successful to work with, so successful working with. It gives them that perception, that sense that Russia is indeed exhausting all of its diplomatic options. And it also means that if Ukraine F's this one up again, which I'm sure it will, I'm sure that the UK or the collective West will push Ukraine to do something in these corridors, to do some funny business in these corridors. I'm sure that Ukraine's going to do it again. Russia now can say, you see, we told you guys that you can't trust Ukraine, you can't trust what they sign up to, and all of this stuff. So those are kind of the on the record, the apparent wins for Russia. Now, the apparent losses for Russia here is that Russia you could make the claim that Russia looks weak. You could make that claim. You could say that Russia was talking strong and they said that Ukraine has attacked them and they're pulling out of the grain deal and all of these things. And there was a big uproar, but now Russia is coming back again and saying, okay, that's fine. We'll get back into this grain deal. And you could also make the case that all the threats, or at least the collective West can make the case that all the threats from NATO and from the US and from the EU, they forced Russia to blink, right? Because they were threatening Russia. You better get back into this grain deal. You better get back in it. And you could say that these threats, and I'm sure many collective West publications, New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, I'm sure they're going to say stuff like, threats from the Biden White House and NATO have forced a weak Russia, a collapsing Putin, to re-enter the grain deal. I could see a headline like that, already being written up in the offices of the New York Times. So that I think is the big W, is the big L in all of this for Russia. PR optics loss. You could make the claim, and this is something that I was saying, that Russia, by pulling out of this grain deal, kind of opened up the way for, or was an indication that Russia was opening up the way for a move onto Odessa, because Russia not having to worry about these corridors and safeguarding the grain exports would mean that Russia can just basically now prepare to look at Odessa via the Black Sea. So you could make that argument as well. You could also say on the flip side that perhaps Odessa, moving on to Odessa via the Black Sea, isn't that important. I guess maybe Surovikin said, look, and Shoigu, they said, look, it's not that important. These corridors are not going to make that much of a difference if we do decide to move towards Odessa, and even so, this agreement, the grain deal, states that Russia is able to take military action if it sees it fit. It's able to protect its interests, and it's able to go after military targets. That's what I want to say. The grain deal does not prohibit, and this is going way back from July, the grain deal never prohibited Russia from striking military assets in Odessa or around the Black Sea. And that was one of the original provisions in the grain deal. And Shoigu was very explicit in pointing that out, saying that the grain deal does not prohibit us from going after military targets. And so, maybe the whole Odessa, Black Sea, Odessa thing maybe might have been on my end, or what do I want to say? Maybe it might have been on my end exaggerated. Maybe it wasn't, and it isn't that important at this moment in time to look at a move onto Odessa, and even more specifically so, a move onto Odessa via the Black Sea. So that's the other part of this re-entry into the grain deal. Now, let's get into what I think are the real reasons why Russia is re-entering the grain deal. This is what I believe are the real reasons. I believe that it's about Turkey. That's what I think this is all about. It's about keeping Turkey on side. It's about helping Erdogan. Erdogan has an election coming. His approval rating is starting to climb. Things are looking good for Erdogan. He's going to be the Sultan, the king of gas to Europe via Turkstream. So that's some leverage that Erdogan has over Russia. And why would you want to ruin that Turkstream plan, making Turkey into a hub? So I'm sure Erdogan was like, look, get back into the grain deal. Why do you want to jeopardize all the other deals that we have going on, Putin? Why would you want to do that, specifically the gas deal? Erdogan was being challenged by Macron, actually. And Macron was coming up with an idea. He was floating out an idea to move the grain via land through Moldova. And so, you know, Turkey has always been at odds with France. It's had a very tricky, antagonistic relationship with Macron and France. And so I'm sure that Turkey was looking at Macron's proposed plan to move the grain overland via Moldova to Europe. And now Erdogan is one-upping Macron. He squashes that proposal. I don't even know if that was a very viable proposal, but you know, he kind of squashes that Macron plan, and so that's another reason why Russia is re-entering this grain deal, and more importantly, for Turkey and for Erdogan, they were making money off of this. That's it. Yeah, a lot of people were making money, the Zelensky regime and all kinds of other politicians and EU officials, oligarchs, and God knows who else. But Turkey was making money on this, from what I understand. My understanding of this, and I could be wrong, but from what I understand, Turkey was getting this grain, they were processing it, and then they were shipping it off to the EU, to Europe. And so they were making a lot of cash from this, or a good amount of cash from being the food distributor, the grain distributor of the EU. So Turkey is not only the gas king of the European Union, it's also the grain king of the European Union. That's quite a good position to be in if you're Erdogan in Turkey. So I think the real reason, I mean, you have some wins for Russia, you have some losses for Russia by re-entering this grain deal, depending on how you want to frame it and look at it. But I think the real reason for Russia re-entering the grain deal is all about Turkey and keeping Turkey on side and keeping Turkey happy, making sure Erdogan is happy, making sure Erdogan is making his money, making sure Turkstream is still a go, is still going to happen. I think all of these things are why Russia is re-entering the grain deal. And at the end of the day, I'm sure Putin and his team, they sat down and they said, look, at the end of the day, if and when Ukraine breaks this deal again, when they go back on their guarantees this time, next time, when Ukraine does this, Erdogan won't have any other cards to play. He won't have any reason to come to us and say, get involved in the grain deal again, forget about what Ukraine did. In other words, Erdogan won't have any way to convince Russia to not exit the grain deal when Ukraine breaks it again, which they are. Ukraine will break these guarantees. They are going to go back on these guarantees. I'm 80% convinced of it. 80%. I'll leave it 20%, saying that they honor these written guarantees. But I'm sure that Putin and his team, they sat down and they said, if and when Ukraine breaks it, the next time, Turkey won't be able to tell us anything. And they're going to have to accept our withdrawal from the grain deal, and that'll be that. So that's what's going on with this grain deal. In my opinion, it's still early in the announcement, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more analysis and a lot more opinions with regards to this grain deal. And so we'll see what other reasons or what other opinions come to light, what other facts come to light as we get more information with this breaking news. Russia did manage to gift, in the interim of this withdrawal, they did manage to gift, I believe it was 25,000 tons of wheat to Lebanon. They did that. And they also sold 300,000 tons of wheat to Pakistan. Pakistan about 300,000 tons. So there you have it. Let's do a couple of more stories. How about the fact that we are in November and Europe has said, specifically Macron, he has come out with a statement and said that Europe is ready to supply Ukraine with electricity to prevent an energy crisis. That is what Macron has said. He said France will do everything in its power, financial, equipment, you name it, to prevent Ukraine from having an energy crisis from the Russian missiles and drones. In September, Zelensky came out with a statement, and he said that Ukraine is ready to supply Europe with electricity to prevent an energy crisis. Interesting how things have flip-flopped, it seems. So that's I thought that was interesting. And we have the Russian Ministry of Defense, the MOD. They have said that about 200 mercenaries have been destroyed in Ukraine in the last 2 weeks in the SMO, the Special Operation. Let's do a clown world and end this video. I don't want this video to be too long. This is a fantastic clown world. And it's from The Atlantic. The Atlantic, boy, do they put out some interesting propaganda. They ran an article in the technology section with the title, Russians have infiltrated the internet. Intelligence agencies confirm that Russians are on the internet, but how long have they been there and how many are there? Oh my God, Russians are on the internet. They've infiltrated the internet. Everyone, look out, take cover. How long have the Russians been there? How long have Russians been on the internet? I can't believe this. Red alert, red alert. Russians are on the internet. They've infiltrated the internet. Wow. This is a disaster. I love this. This is so ridiculous. This is such a ridiculous article, such a ridiculous headline. Oh boy. Russians have also infiltrated. They've infiltrated airplanes. They've infiltrated, what else have they infiltrated? Cars. They've infiltrated cars. They've infiltrated hotels. They've infiltrated businesses, hospitals. Where else? Metros, homes, apartment buildings. They're everywhere. They've infiltrated all these things. How did this happen? Oh boy. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. Check out Alexander's channel. Check out the Duran channel. Go to Duran Shop. 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care.